a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Alberta, Canada, and I am excited to be here today with you to share 8 masculine card ideas from one piece of 12 by 12 pattern paper. So before we get started, I just wanted to give you a few reminders about what's coming up, what's going on, what you should be aware of, and then we're going to jump right in and we're going to create some cards. Okay, so first of all, we are nearing the end of these catalogs. So both the January to April 2024 mini catalog and the 2023-24 annual catalog. So that means that there are some last chance lists that are out. And you can find those last chance lists on my website, but you can also check my online store. Just click the last chance banner and it will list everything. There is a selection of items up to 60% off. All of these products are available while supplies last. Okay, so I want to point that out. If there's anything on this list that you want, pick it up sooner than later because some of them will not last long. There's already several items that have sold out. All right, okay, then we've also got a few upcoming things that will be, registration will be closing soon. So first of all, I wanted to remind you that registration is still open and will continue to be open for a little while for National Scrapbooking Day, the virtual retreat. If you are a scrapbooker, I encourage you to come to this event. We've got so many things planned for the 4th, which is National Scrapbooking Day, but we're going to kick it off with a crafty Zoom session on the 3rd. So we've got some challenges. We've got a couple guest stampers that are going to share or guest designers that are going to share some of their crafty projects as well. So you don't want to miss out on that. And it doesn't matter what product you use. So whether you use Stampin' Up! Product or some other product, it doesn't matter. You are welcome because we just really want to encourage you to use the stuff that's in your stash. All right. So registration is still open for that. You can find the details on my blog at stamptreasures.com, and then just click the events page and you can find all of that information. There are some other deadlines coming up, but I'm going to share those with you towards the end of this video because registration closes for those. But now let's talk about what we're going to do today. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a one sheet wonder. However, I'm actually only going to create 4 of the 8 cards today because to do a full one sheet wonder just takes a long time, and we're actually creating 2 of each of the same card. So instead of me showing you both cards or creating both cards, I'm just going to create the 4 of them. So I'm going to be using this 6 by 12 inch piece of patterned paper. So if you wanted to do the 8 cards, you would start with a 12 by 12, just cut it in half, and I'll walk you through cutting it. And you would just repeat the process that I'm sharing for these 4 cards. You would just do everything twice. Okay, but I'll share a little bit more about that in a bit. Now let's talk about this pattern paper. This pattern paper was a celebration offering back in January and February. So it is no longer available. Now just know that these cards can be recreated over and over and over using any pattern paper and any stamps or dies or anything that you have. You do not need to have the product that I am using in order to participate or to take inspiration from this. Okay, but let me share a peek at the pattern paper. So this is it. I love this grid pattern. This is so fabulous for the background on scrapbook layouts. So this is obviously the one that I'm going to use today. This is another great pattern. Now when you're picking out your pattern paper, it is easier if you pick a pattern paper that is not directional. Okay, so there's that one, and then there's this one. So there's a couple sheets in this paper pack where you can either die cut or fussy cut the images. Another fabulous pattern. And then we've got some hammers and some nuts and bolts, some stripes, and some, I think these are screws. So that's the pattern paper. Now I know not everybody's going to have this pattern paper, Like I said, just pull out something that is kind of generic, or something that you love, that you have some stamps or dies or whatever that coordinates. The cards that I'm making are all kind of more masculine themed cards, but you can use these ideas with flowers and make them more feminine. It's completely up to you. Okay, now the other supplies that you will need. Now again, this is for 4 cards, but if you wanted to make the 8, then you would just double this. Okay, so I pulled out 2 pieces of 8.5 by 11 black cardstock. You can choose any colors that coordinate with the pattern paper that you're using. I've got 1 piece of white, so you want a neutral. I have 1 thick white card base, just a standard size card base, which measures 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4.25. And then I've got some scraps of coordinating colors. Okay. All right. So we're going to set this aside. Now, if you guys end up loving these cards that I've made and you did not happen to get a package of this pattern paper while it was available, I have a limited number of kits that I am offering. So it will include half a package of the pattern paper, the supplies that I just showed you, basically these supplies, as well as some black twine and some rustic metallic dots, because those are the embellishments that I'm using, and 4 envelopes. So these are the consumable supplies that you would need to create the 4 cards that I'm sharing today, but you'll have lots of extra pattern paper. These kits, like I said, I have limited numbers. I am giving them away for free with a minimum $60 order before shipping and tax between April 12th and April 19th for as long as the kits are available. Okay. And then make sure that you use this month's host code, and I've linked, or I've posted the host code in the description below. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by cutting. So we're going to pull out our half sheet of pattern paper and these full 3 pieces of cardstock. We'll start with our pattern paper. So I chose this pattern paper because it's not really directional. You can put your screwdrivers going up and down, or they can go side to side. And then the back is just kind of this here. So they work really well together. So the colors coordinate. And this one, because it's particularly not directional, makes it really easy. Okay, so I've got, actually I need to open that. I have got my pattern paper in with the 6-inch length at the top, and I'm going to cut it at 5.25 inches. And then I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to cut it at 4 inches. 4 inches again. So I have 3 pieces that measure 4 by 5.25. And then this strip, I'm going to cut the same. I'm going to cut it at 4 inches, 4 inches again. Okay. So for our first card, we're going to use these 2 pieces. So I'm going to set that aside. For our second card, we're going to take a piece of this and we're going to cut it from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. So I'm just lining those corners up with the groove in my paper trimmer, and I'm going to slice it. Okay, so we're going to use this on the second card and this strip on the second card. So I'm just going to put those underneath here. Okay, and then on the third card, we're going to flip this over and we're going to use this piece. So I'm going to put that in my pile. And then on the fourth card, we're going to cut from the, let me just make sure I got this right, from the top right to the bottom, sorry, from the top left to the bottom right. Actually, no, because if we put it this way, let's keep it going in the same direction. Top right to bottom left. Okay, and we're going to use these 2 pieces, except we're going to flip this one over and use that. So that is the how the pattern paper gets cut. So we'll just, actually I'll just set that over there. Okay, now our white piece. We are gonna cut this, so short end at the top, we're gonna cut it at 4 inches. We're gonna rotate it, we're gonna cut it at 5 1/4 and 5 1/4. Okay, and just put my cards back in order here. So that this is going to be used for the first card. So this pile here and our inside piece. So that's for the first card. And then for the second card, we've got this piece and this piece. So we're gonna add that white layer to that. Okay, and then we're gonna take the rest of this white and we're gonna cut it a 5 1/4. And rotate it and cut it at 3 3/4. Okay, these two pieces are going to be used for stamping our focal points. This piece is going to go with our 4th card. Okay, all right, now we're going to do our black. Okay, so we've got short end at the top. We're going to cut this at 4 1/4. And then we are going to rotate it and we're going to score at 5 1/2. This is going to be for our first card. So for our first card, we've got our card base, our inside piece. This is not our first card, hang on, this one. So we've got our card base, our inside piece, our outside layer, 2 strips, and a white strip. Okay. So we're going to set that aside. That is card number 1. And then this leftover piece, we are going to cut it. Okay, actually, first of all, we're going to rotate it. We're going to score it at 5 1/2 inches. And then, let me just check here. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put the score line, top left score line, right into our groove, and we're going to cut down to the bottom right. So I'm lining that up. And cutting that. Okay, so this is for card number 2. So we are going to put these 2 pieces. So we've got our inside piece, our triangular piece, and then a strip. So that's going to go on there. And then we're going to set this aside for now. Then we're going to bring in our second piece of black, and we are going to cut it at 4 1/4. We're going to rotate it. We're going to score it at 5 1/2. Okay, and then, okay, this time what we're going to do, so I've got my score line here, and I'm going to put the top right corner and the bottom left corner, line it up with the grooves on my paper trimmer, and slice. Okay, so that is going to be for card number 4. But we need to do something else for this. So I'm just going to set this aside. This leftover strip, what we're going to do is we're going to stick it into our paper trimmer with the long edge at the top, and we're going to cut it at 6 inches. And then we're going to score it at 1/2 inch. So I'm lining it up with the 1/2 inch mark on this side, and I'm going to score it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it so that that score line is lined up with my groove, and then the bottom left corner. So top right corner, but where the score line is, not right in the corner. And bottom left, and I'm going to slice. Okay, so we're doing a bit of a fun fold on one of the cards. So these two pieces, this piece and these two pieces are for card number 4. Okay, so now what we have left is we've got these 3 pieces. Some of them we're going to use and some of them we're not. So one of these pieces, all these triangular pieces are all the same. So one of these pieces, I'm going to take it and I'm going to trim 1/4 of an inch. So I've got the long edge at the top, and I'm going to trim 1/4 of an inch off. And I'm going to keep this piece. This piece is going to go with card number 1. This piece is going to get embossed. So you can use any embossing folder that you have. I've chosen the metal plate embossing folder because it just kind of has that same feel as our tools have. So I've gone ahead and I've embossed that. That is going to go for card number 3, which is our white card base. And I don't know where, oh, here. And this piece. Okay. Actually, no, it's this way. Okay, we're going to use that. So those 3 pieces are for card number 3. So I'm going to put those on top of card number 4. All right, and then from this piece here, we are going to cut a piece that measures 2 5/8 by 4. Okay, so I'm going to put the long edge at the top, and I'm going to cut 2 5/8. And then I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to cut it at 4 inches. Okay, and then I have another piece of, I have a piece of basic gray that not basic gray, gray granite that I've gone ahead and I've embossed it using that same embossing folder, the metal plate embossing folder. I will have all of the measurements and the supplies linked in today's blog post, so don't worry about scrambling to write these down. But this is going to go with our card number 2. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. Now these leftover black pieces, these can be used for die cutting. I do use some of them for die cutting, and then there's some that are just leftover. Okay, so I think we've cut most of our pieces now. We will need to bring in the paper trimmer a little bit more in a bit, but we're going to go ahead and start assembling. So card number 1, again, we've got our card base, which is a piece of black, our inside piece, our layer of DSP, and then 2 strips of DSP, a scrap of white that we had left over from when we trimmed our white down, and a scrap of black that we had left over. Okay, now we will need to stamp some images. So I'm going to bring in my scraps because we are going to do that first before we start assembling. Okay, so now I am using the coordinating bundle. So this is a bundle from the January to April mini catalog. It is called the Trusty Tools bundle. It is so fabulous. There, with the coordinating dies, you can just do so much with it. So I'm just going to share just a smattering of what you can do with it today. But it's great for masculine cards, but not just masculine cards. With the paintbrush, you can do some fun things for crafters. And you can also make feminine cards because there are a lot of women out there who like to use tools and do home DIY projects and stuff. So you can make cards for them as well. Now, these 2 pieces are carrying over to the next annual catalog. However, they won't be available as a bundle. So you'll be able to purchase them separately. But right now, if you purchase the bundle before the end of April, you'll save 10%. Whereas come May 1st, you'll be able to still purchase them, but you'll have to purchase them individually and you won't save that 10%. Okay, so I wanted to point that out. All right, so first of all, we're going to stamp our greeting. So the ink that we're going to be using today, or one of the ink pads, is Memento ink because I'm going to color in some of the images, and I've chosen to color them in using our Stampin' Blends, which are our alcohol markers. So if you choose to color in your images another way, or maybe the images that you've chosen to use don't need to be colored in, then you can use whatever ink works best. Okay, so I'm gonna make this first one a Father's Day card. And just know that if you have no need for Father's Day cards, you can just switch out the greeting. So you just want to pick something that's kind of longer and narrower. Okay, so I'll stamp that. And then I'm gonna set that aside. We're gonna trim that down a little bit. Okay, and then I'm gonna stamp some of the images from the stamp set. So I'm gonna use the pencil. Actually, I think I'll stamp them on this big piece. I'll put this piece aside for later. Okay, so I'm gonna stamp the pencil and the paintbrush. And the hammer. Okay, now this is a two-step stamp. Let's close this up so I don't get ink on everything. Okay, so this is a two-step stamp. So right now I can take, this little bit is actually for paint on the end of the paintbrush, which we're going to use that. I could, instead of coloring in, I could use this stamp to stamp the handle. So I could stamp it in a color. I could use this stamp to stamp the handle of the hammer. And then there's this piece to stamp the pencil. But I am just going to use the tip of the paint to do my paintbrush, and then I'm going to color in the rest. So I'm using some Poppy Parade. So I've pulled the red from the DSP. So that's one of the great things about Stampin' Up! Is they've got ink, they've got cardstock, they've got pattern paper, all to match. Oh, let's turn this way. All to match. So there's no guessing. So I'm just lining this up and stamp it down. So now I have a little bit of red paint on my paintbrush. All right. So actually, and we should have stamped 2 of these paintbrushes, but that's okay. I've got them all colored in and cut out, so you don't need to see me do that. But so if you are replicating these cards, you want 2 of these paintbrushes. Okay, so I'm going to use dark gray granite, and I'm just going to color in this little strip across the paintbrush, this little strip across the pencil and the end of the pencil, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of detail right here where these lines are on the hammer. And then I'll use light gray granite and color in the rest of the top of the hammer. Okay, and then we're going to bring in some wild wheat, and I'm going to use a little bit of dark and just color just a little bit of that. Oh, and I also use this for the pencil as well. And then I'll fill in the rest with some light. So I'm just going up to where that red starts, where the paint starts, just so it looks like my bristles are a different color. And then I'll color in the rest of the pencil. And then I've got some coral, Calypso coral, that I'm going to use for the top of the pencil. And then I've got my Poppy Parade for the handles. So I'm just going to use a little bit of dark on here, a little bit here, and maybe a little bit down here. And then I'll fill it in with light. I'm just going to fill in these little spots that I missed and color in the rest. I am going to leave a little bit of white space. So I'm going to go across like this and then down. And then kind of right there, I'll just leave a little bit of white. And then I'm going to repeat that process over here with the hammer. And again, just leave a little bit of white showing. So there are my colored in images, and then I can use the coordinating dies. So if we take a look at the dies, the hammer will cut out the hammer, the paintbrush will cut out the paintbrush, and then this one will cut out the pencil. But I've got those all done. So let me grab these pieces here, and I don't need this strip. Okay. So now I've got all my pieces ready. I can go ahead and start assembling the card. So I'm going to fold my card base in half. So, and this is going to be a landscape card, or a portrait card, sorry. So it's going to stand like that. And we're going to decorate this piece first. So what I'm going to do is, this is just a smidge longer than this piece. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use just a little bit of multi-purpose glue going across the top. And then I'm going to adhere it to this scrap of black. So remember, this black was a leftover piece from a little smidge that we cut off when we were trimming down our pieces. So I always say you never throw anything away until you're finished crafting that project, and then you decide what you want to toss and what you want to keep. This is going to go across here because you can often make use of those little scraps. And I'm going to put this, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of an inch to an inch from the bottom. And just try to make sure it's straight. And then this is going to go onto our card base. And what in the world? This is not, oh, what have I done here? Okay, I did not score this one right. Okay, let's grab another piece. All right. Okay, let's try this again. So we want 4 1/4 scored at 5 1/2. I'm not quite sure what I did there. Okay, 4 1/4 scored at 5 1/2. All right, let's try this again. I think I'm going to put a little bit more adhesive on here, just because this is partially dry now. This is just multi-purpose glue, so just our green glue that I've added into a bottle that I picked up on Amazon. That's better. Okay, and then for our inside piece, I'm going to put this along the top. And then I'm going to take one of my paint brushes, add a little bit of glue, and that's going to go right here. And then we can add that to the inside. All right, so now we've got a pretty inside. Let's work on our outside. I'm going to bring my paper trimmer back and just trim this so that it's a little bit narrower. Okay, and I'm going to angle cut this end and trim this so that it's just a little bit shorter. I'm I'm going to use my bone folder and kind of curl this up so it's kind of like a wave. And then take a dimensional and I'm going to put it right where the raised bit is. And then I'll add some flat adhesive on either end. I like to do this because it gives your greeting kind of a little bit of movement, just adds a little bit of dimension to it. And I'm going to line that up right with the top of that black piece. Okay, so now we are ready to start embellishing. So I'm going to take my hammer, I'm going to put it on flat. So it's going to go right about there. And then the pencil, actually I'm going to put the pencil on afterwards. Now I'm going to take just some edges of my dimensionals. I'm going to put one down here, and I can put a full one up at the top. So we're going to pop this guy up. And we're going to crisscross it like that. And then we'll add just a little bit of multi-purpose glue on here, and we're going to slide our pencil underneath. And then we'll finish it off with a baker's twine bow. So if you guys follow me, you know that I love my baker's twine. I use baker's twine or some sort of twine. Sometimes I pull apart ribbon on almost every project that I make. So I'm just using some leftover mini glue dots from a previous kit. And I'm just going to add that bow right on top, and then we're going to finish it off with our rustic metallic dots. These rustic metallic dots are a perfect complement to this collection, but you could also use, we have some cork dots that are in the January to April mini catalog that are retiring, unfortunately, but those cork dots would look fabulous with this collection as well. All right, so there is card number 1. So if we were doing a full sheet of 12 by 12, we would have 2 of these. We would have made 2 of these. Okay, so that is card number 1. All right, I'm going to set that aside and we're going to move on. Let me just kind of tidy up my space here. Okay, so card number 2 is this one here. Okay, so now I'm going to show you this card first, because I know I'm going to get questions. I get questions all the time when I make cards kind of like this. All right, okay, actually, let me just have a look at the comments here. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys are enjoying these cards. Oh, somebody's making Mother's Day cards while they're watching. That's fun. All right, let's see here. Okay. All right, so this is the card that we're doing. So it's a little bit of a different, well, it's the same kind of fold. It's just we're trimming off the front. So whenever I make cards like this, people ask, well, how does it stand? It doesn't stand. So I have these little easels that I picked up on Amazon. When I have cards like this that I want to display, I'll just set them on an easel. You can also use, let me grab these little things, which I think are used in gardening. So you can use something like this and stand it up and it would stand up. And you can also get these little wood pieces with slits in them so that you could stand it up that way. But the other thing that you can do, and maybe what I'll do is I'll do that with this card. So instead of doing it portrait, we can do it landscape. Okay, so maybe that's what we'll do with this one, although I think we could still make it work. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to, yeah, we'll fold it this way so that it doesn't open backwards. Like it'll open like a normal book. Okay, so this is all, I'm going to recreate this card. I'm just going to do a landscape version just to show you if you really want it to stand, then this is the way you should create this card. Okay, so I'm just folding that so it's nice and crisp. And then we're going to take, oh, but you know what I won't be able to do? I'll have to switch this around. Okay, let's just see what this is going to look like, because that's a lot of gray. And if we did it this way, we could do it. Okay, we will have it open backwards. We'll have it open backwards because I really want the red side out. Okay. So we are going to just adhere this. So remember, this started as a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece. So this will fit perfectly. When you cut it diagonally, it will fit perfectly in here so that we have just a sliver of the back of black showing. Okay, so that's going to go on there. And then this piece I'm going to put along here. And it will peek out a little bit, which I actually don't mind. So that's going to go up the side here. Or if you're doing this version, then it would go up the top. Let's put a little bit of glue on here. And that's going to go on here so that we have about 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. Okay, so that's going to be our card base. And then we're going to take these two pieces. So we cut this from our black that we had, and then this is an extra piece. So for those of you who missed the very beginning of my video, oh, this is a little longer. I do have some kits that are available. I'm offering them free with a $60 purchase using the host code. I've linked in the description more information to where you can find, where you can place your order and what you need to do. So between April 12th and April 19th, I have a minimum number of kits that if you place a $60 order before shipping and tax using the host code, then I will send you these kits to make 4 cards, and there's half a package of this pattern paper in there. So if anybody is interested in that, and if you want to guarantee that you have a kit, the sooner that you place your order, the better. You can always reach out to me first. I mean, I always have little treats to send people. I appreciate all orders, but if you have your heart set on this kit, then just reach out to me first to make sure that there's a kit available for you. All right. Okay, so this one we're going to put across like this. So for this, we do want to be mindful of where we put our adhesive, because we don't want to have adhesive on here. Otherwise, we're going to seal our card closed. So I'm just going to kind of use my hands or my hand and just kind of put the adhesive like that. And then position this on here so that I have a relatively even border. So I want the white to have an even border and then the red to have an even border. All right. Okay, so it'll look like that. It'll open like that. Okay, now we need to work on our focal point. So I showed you how I stamped and colored the hammer. So I'm not going to do that again because you don't need to see me color it in multiple times. But I do want to do the wrench. So I'm going to stamp the wrench with Memento. And I've tried to use the same color combination for the whole, like all the way through, just so you don't feel like you need to have like a ton of things if you're replicating these projects. And I'm going to bring in this scrap piece and I'm going to stamp thank you. So this time we're going to make a thank you card. So our first card was a Father's Day card. This one's going to be a thank you card. So I'll just stamp that on there. And then on the inside, I'm going to stamp the greeting that says, "You're the most awesome." So I'm going to ink that up, open it up, and stamp it in the middle. All right. There's some great greetings in this stamp set. Okay, So we need to color our wrench. So I'm just going to use the same colors that I used last time. So I'll start with some dark gray granite. And just where these lines are, I'm just adding a little bit, and then this little thing that you twist, I'm adding a little bit of dark there. Oh, and I'm going to color this inside bit dark as well. And then I'll fill in the rest with light gray granite. And this bit with light. And then the rest with some Poppy Parade. So I'll just add a little bit of dark. And I'm just using where those lines are, just assuming that that's where it's meant to be a little bit darker. So I love it when the images have that on there. So I don't have to think about where the shading should be. Okay. And then of course there is a die to cut that out. So this die here will cut it out. So for this particular one, you wanted to stamp a hammer and a wrench. And then I fussy cut the thank you. Now I know fussy cutting is not for everyone. So if you don't like fussy cutting, you can cut that straight across and it will work just fine. The other thing that we need is we need our baker's twine bow. So I'm just gonna grab a length of this and tie a bow. Trim that off. Okay. And so now we need to decorate ours a little bit differently here. Okay. So if we did the hammer, and the wrench, yeah, we can still do this. I think it'll still look good. Okay. So I'm going to add some glue down here. I'm not going to go all the way to the top though, because you'll see that it hangs off a little bit. Hangs off the top and the bottom just a little bit. And then this guy's going to get dimensionals. And let's trim some more edges here. This guy's going to go this way. Like that. We'll use a mini glue dot to adhere our bow. And put it right there. And then this will get a mini glue dot on this side because it's going to sit over top of the raised wrench. And then I'll use a little piece of a dimensional on the other end so that it's even. All right. So we've got our thank you, and then we'll add our dots, or our rustic metallic dots. We'll do one there. Do another one up here. All right. And there we go. There is card number 2. So this is the same card. I just rotated it, and now it will stand up. So if that's something that really concerns you, then you might want to do the landscape version. But if that doesn't matter to you, then the portrait version will work just fine. So that is card number 3 and 4 out of our 8 cards that we're creating. Okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, the next one is the one with our white card base. So we're going to start by folding our card in half. we're going to do a little bit of stamping on this. So since this is just kind of like a plain gray granite pattern, it does have a little bit of a pattern on there. It kind of looks like it's a little bit distressed, but we're going to stamp a little bit on here. And I'm going to use these little, I think they're screws, and just stamp a few tone on tone. So it's gray granite on gray granite. It's meant to be light, so it doesn't show up a ton. I'll bring it up a little closer. I'm stamping off of the pattern paper as well, and I'm rotating the stamp around. So this makes it look like the pattern paper was cut down. Okay. So I think you can kind of see that pattern. It's very subtle. We're going to keep that open because we are to take, okay, so the other thing that I've done is I've taken the gray granite, a piece of gray granite cardstock. So remember at the beginning in the supplies that I said to pull out some scraps of coordinating colors. So I used a little piece of the gray granite to die cut this piece right here. And I want to give this a little bit more interest. So what I'm going to do is I need to grab, here, we'll just use this. I'll use the back of this. Okay, I'm going to take my gray granite ink and I'm just going to wipe it along the cardstock. And my gray granite ink, it actually needs to be refilled. So it's not, this is really subtle. I'll bring it up so that you can have a closer look. I'm pushing actually fairly hard, but if yours is well inked, you don't want to push very hard because it'll come out quite nice. All right, so can you see that little bit of texture? You can see that little bit of ink that's rubbed on there. So that's kind of a fun way to add a little bit more interest to just a plain piece of cardstock. And I'm going to use that "You're the most awesome" greeting again. And I'm going to stamp it on here a little bit closer to the right. And then while I have my ink out, this piece, so you want to stamp an extra paintbrush. I've already done the paintbrush, so I'm not going to do that one again, but I'm going to stamp the tape measure. Okay, and I think, yeah, that's it. All right, so now to color the tape measure, and again, you don't have to color it exactly the same way as I have, but I'm going to use some dark gray granite, and I'm going to color here and inside the circle, and then I'll fill it in with light. And I am going to leave a little bit of white showing. Oh, maybe not. All right, and then I'm going to take my Poppy Parade because I want all my tools to match. So dark Poppy Parade, just add a little bit of color here. And then fill in the rest with the light. I love that you can't see your lines for the most part with these blends. All right, so there it is colored in, and here are my two tools cut out using the coordinating dies. Now we're ready to start assembling. So this piece is going to go on here. So these pieces are going to go on like this. So I'm just trying to line them up so that they're straight, and I've got a relatively even border going around the edges. So this black piece is a piece that we cut off of one of our previous cards. So it's left over from card number 2. And then we trimmed it down and embossed it using the metal plate embossing folder. So that's going to go on there. And this piece was also left over from, I really need to refill my glue. This piece was left over from card number 2 as well. We just flipped it over. Okay, I'm gonna just set this aside and I'll use this. Okay, now this piece is gonna go on with dimensionals. So I'll grab some of these. And this is going to get popped up kind of towards the bottom right corner. So like that. All right, and then our paintbrush is going to get a dimensional and a little bit of multi-purpose glue. That's going to sit right on top like that. And then this piece is going to get a very narrow little bit of dimensional and then a little bit of multi-purpose glue as well. So the dimensional is just so that it doesn't kind of flatten. And that is going to go right on there like that. And of course, we got to add some black baker's twine. So I'm going to tie a little bow. So in the kits that I'm giving away with a $60 order, it does include the baker's twine and the rustic metallic dots that you need for the 4 cards that we're making today. That's going to go on there like that, and then we'll add our rustic metallic dots. And I did not do anything to the inside of this card. So there is card number 3, or 5 and 6 if you're doing all 8 cards. All right, now moving on to the last one. So this one is a little bit of a fun fold. So we'll start by creating our base. Okay, so we've got, this is 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2, and then trimmed down. We're gonna fold along that score line so that it opens like this. And then this piece was 4 1/4 by 6 and then scored at 1/2 inch. So we're just going to fold along that score line, make sure it's nice and crisp. We're going to add some adhesive to this, just to this 1/2 inch flap. So this card is called, well, I call it a crisscross card. I don't know if that's actually what it's called. We're going to line up our card base right up against that score line. And then it's going to go like this. But we're going to create a pocket. So you could do it so that you open it, but we're going to actually create a pocket. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my pattern paper to this flap. So I'll just use some multi-purpose glue. And let's open it up so that we can see it a little bit better. Again, you'll have about that 1/16 of an inch of the black peeking out from behind. and I love the black. It just makes the colors pop. And then this piece is going to go on the other flap. Oh, it feels like so much glue comes out when I use this container over the other one. Okay, so again, we have that nice black border. Hello, hello everyone who's just joining in. Okay, so now I am going to add just a narrow bead of adhesive right down there. And then I'm also going to do it on this side. So for those of you who are just joining in, we're creating 4 cards from a 6x12, or if you want to look at it the other way, 8 cards from a 12x12. So we're doing 2 of each, and I'll bring them all back once we're done here. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to set this aside now. So now we've got this little pocket. I'm going to set something on top of it just to make sure that that sets nicely. So I'll just set that out there. Okay, now what we need to do is we're going to pull in our dies, and we're going to do some die cutting. So, well, I've already done the die cutting, but some of these pieces create, it's like paper piecing almost. So what I've done, let me bring in, I've got so many little pieces here, I got to be careful. Okay, so let me share what I've cut. So from those black scraps that we had left over, so these black scraps, I die cut this guy. Okay, so I die cut that from black, but I also die cut it from some Poppy Parade. Okay, so you want to cut 2 of those if you're doing these cards as shown. I die cut the wrench from some silver foil. This is from the holographic foil package, which is on the retiring list. I did not check this morning to see if it was still available, but any silver foil would work. From the silver foil, I also cut out this bit. So this is the drill part of the drill. And then I also cut out this die, which is the screws. So it's 1 full screw and then the tops of 2 others. So all that was cut from the foil. And then also from Poppy Parade, I cut this same piece out, and you'll see why. And then this piece. So some of these pieces, until you look closely, it's kind of tricky to figure out what the pieces are meant for. So this cuts a little circle and then this little kind of rounded rectangle. So we're going to piece these together. I set this aside. Okay. We're going to cut some of it apart and piece some of it together. All right, so on here, you can see that there are some cut lines. So I'm just going to snip this so that I can use this little bit on here. So we're going to attach that. And this is where that other glue bottle, this piece won't be too bad, but some of the other pieces might be a little tricky with this wider nozzle. Okay, so that's going to go under there. This round piece is going to go on here. And then this piece we're going to cut off just the drill bit. And then this is going to go over top of our silver. And I'll bring this up a little closer once it's all put together so that you can see. So that's going to go on there like that. And then this tiny little piece is going to go on top of here. Like that. And then this is going to get attached on the back of this. So I'm going to put just a narrow bead of glue on here. And position that on there. So now we've got this fun multicolored drill. Look how fun that is. Isn't it cute? So can you see where I put that little rounded rectangle on there? I don't know how well that's showing up. And then there's the circle and the base. And this actually pops up as well. So if you wanted to create even more dimension, you could cut this in black and then you could snip this straight across and pop this piece up. But I'm just going to leave it as is. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit more stamping, and then we'll have all the pieces that we need to create or to finish off our card. So on this scrap piece of white, I'm going to use, again, this You're the Most Awesome. I love this greeting because you can put it on the outside of a card and then leave the inside blank, and you could create a thank you card. You could make it a birthday card. You can make it a Father's Day card. So it can really be used for anything. So just stamp that along the bottom there, and then we'll trim it. Just want to make sure I don't cut off the tops of my letters here. So this card is more about the dies than about the stamping, the stamped images. So we're going to trim that down. We'll trim this down just a little bit. We're going to do that same little trick where we kind of curl our card or our greeting a little bit. And we'll add a dimensional on here, and then we'll bring back our card base. Should be nice and set now. Okay, so our drill is going to go on here like this. I'm going to add some dimensionals. Just being a bit mindful that your drill bit is going to hang into the opening there. So that's going to go on there like that. So we just want to figure out our positioning for our greeting before we stick that down. Add a little bit of multi-purpose glue in those two areas. And did I peel off the backing? No. So we want it right about there. So that's going to go on like that. We're going to take our wrench, and our wrench is going to go in here, so kind of like that. I'll just use a little bit of multi-purpose glue, and then we can peel off the backing on our drill. Looks like it's a little crooked. All right, so we've got that. And then of course we need our baker's twine bow. My ends are twisted here. All right, we'll trim this and use a mini glue dot. I'm going to stick that right in here. Pop that on there, and then we'll add our dots, and then we'll work on the inside. Add some rustic metallic dots on there. Okay, so now for our inside. So this is the smaller piece of white that we cut down, and that's just going to slide in here like that. I want to stamp a greeting on here, so I'm going to turn this one into a Father's Day card as well. Here we go. And memento. So again, you could make this a thank you card. You could make it a birthday card. Pop that on there. And then we'll add our little silver screws on here. This is just kind of a fun little detail. I think these would be really fun as a shaker element on a card as well. You could die cut a bunch of these. Okay, and then that is just going to go in our pocket. Just like that. And that is our final card. So card number 4, or what would it be, 7 and 8, if you're making 2 of each. Just pop that in there. This is also a great card if you have a gift card to include in there as well. So there, let me bring all the cards back. I have a different version of some of these cards to share with you as well. Okay, so there is, let me make sure I can see them all. Those ones. And then this one had the different versions. And then this one. So many fun options. And that's just using one of the pattern papers in that paper pack. So you could use one of the yellow ones, or one of the Lost Lagoon pattern pieces to create different versions of these same cards. Okay, so hopefully that inspired you. Hopefully you can use this idea and recreate a bunch of different samples, because again, it would be so easy to take this One Sheet Wonder template and just switch out the pattern paper and the focal point that you're using and create a different version. So here are a couple others. So these ones they don't follow exactly the same. So they are still the diagonal cards. So this one opens up like this. So I used some plaid pattern paper that was available as an online exclusive. As far as I know, it's still available. I think it's called the tartan paper. It comes with 3 different colors of the plaid. And then I just used the Countryside Corners dies and a great big greeting. So lots of birthdays here. This card is similar to this one. It's just rotated this way. And then this card is similar to this one. Yeah, so these 3 cards are like this one, just landscape. And then those 2 cards are like this one. Okay, so that's just another version, just to give you an idea of how different the cards can look by simply switching up the supplies that you use. All right, now before we go, just a reminder. Let me bring in my bin. Okay, we don't need this black. So just a reminder, if you place a $60 order with me between April 12th and 19th using the host code that's linked in the description, I'll send you one of these kits. I do have limited numbers of kits though, so maybe double check with me first before you place your order, unless it's, within the next little while. And then Sunday is the last day to sign up for a few of my classes. So my ice cream swirl class to go, where you're going to create these 6 cards. You can find that all on my blog, stamptreasures.com. You can find all the details. So Sunday's the last day to get your kit for that class. I also have an in-person or to-go technique class coming up on April 26th, I believe it is. We're using window sheets and creating 4 different cards, using window sheets in 4 different ways. So here's a quick little peek at those cards. So very, very quick. So if you want to sign up for that class, the deadline is also on Sunday. And then lastly, if you are looking for a scrapbooking kit, Sunday is also the last day to request the ice cream swirl scrapbooking kit. All right, so I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. You're inspired to go try that one sheet wonder. And thank you so much for joining me today. It's always nice to know that the people are watching and I'm not standing here talking to myself. And if you do recreate these cards, make sure that you share them with me because I would love to see them. If you post them online, tag me. Or if you don't share your projects online, just send me a photo. I would love to see what you're creating. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fabulous weekend. Bye, guys.